Asian equities declined as reports surfaced of Israeli airstrikes on Iran, prompting a sell-off in stocks and risk assets, while safe haven assets like gold and the Japanese yen surged. Taiwan's weighted index led losses, plummeting with 3.44%, while Japan's Nikkei initially dropped 3% but later stabilized at 2.4%. Additionally, Topix, Kospi, Kosdaq and Australia's S&P indices all experienced declines of more than 1%. Meanwhile, gold reached an all-time high, accompanied by a strengthening Japanese yen. Oil prices also surged by more than 3%, with Brent crude futures surpassing $90 a barrel before easing to just above $89. In the U.S., the Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500 and Nasdaq all declined by nearly 1%. Netflix shares dropped over 4% in extended trading, despite beating earnings expectations, as the company announced it would no longer report paid memberships from 2025. Well, let's discuss all of this now with Naeem Aslam. He's Zay Capital's Markets Chief Investment Officer and joins us now from London. Naeem, always good to speak to you. So Asia markets are tumbling following some gains on Thursday. Is this all happening due to the crisis in the Middle East?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Look, I think if you look at the market, the sentiment that we had last week when the retaliation attacks happened on Saturday night, things are still somewhat little bit optimistic from that particular lens, because going into a weekend or a Sunday night this week, earlier this week, the market sentiment was incredibly pessimistic because traders were expecting very intense sell-off. But thankfully, the retaliation or the attacks from Israeli side, they didn't really happen, and the situation hasn't escalated to a level that many investors and traders were very much anticipating, because at the time, crude price or Brent oil prices were nearly 95, and then the market expectations were that they will easily cross above $100 or even go to the levels that we saw between Ukraine and Russia war. So I think from that particular perspective, the losses that we have seen, they are still obviously losses, but they are not as intense as market was expecting. So as long as geopolitical tensions continue to remain in certain boundary and there's a less risk of a further retaliation, further attacks, and a much wider war, which could happen anytime, or on the back of anything, or a reaction from Israeli government, we could see a very different markets going into next week.
So Naeem, with gold hitting an all-time high, is this driving the surge in safe haven assets?
Absolutely. Look, I think there's a traditional correlation between the dollar and gold. Before these particular geopolitical tensions, everything was very much focused on what the Federal Reserve is going to do, what the next move is going to be from Jerome Powell. And that correlation was strong, meaning when the dollar was moving up, gold was moving down. When gold was moving up, dollar was moving low. But this particular week, we had comments from the Federal Reserve, the Chairman Jerome Powell, who made it very clear that the interest rates are going to remain longer for a longer period. But despite that, gold prices have continued their move to the upside. And that's potentially mainly for two reasons when I look at it. Number one is traders think that, okay, inflation is here to stay, i.e. the Federal Reserve will have to change their target of inflation 2% to perhaps a new level. And that means there would be a new standard of inflation. So traders are looking for a hedge in relation to that particular factor. Number two, of course, these geopolitical tensions, they still continue to linger very much in the back. And the risk is still on the table when it comes to the reaction from Israel. Yes, so far it seems like there may not be any reaction, or there may be a delay in that reaction. But because of that, traders still continue to favor gold above any other asset, such as even Bitcoin, which is also dubbed, as we all know, as a safe haven asset, but it has failed enormously to act as a safe haven asset right on the back of the event, whenever that happened, whether we compare the situation between Russia and Ukraine, or whether you compare the situation now.
Naeem Aslam in London, thank you so much for breaking that down for us.
Thank you very much.